Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Focus General Plan update. It's 5 o'clock. We're going to give just a couple more minutes for others to join. So please just be patient just a moment and we'll get started. Thank you. Hi, everyone. If you just joined us, we'll be starting momentarily. Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on the Focus General Plan update for National City. Together we plan. And I'm going to turn it over to Carlos, who's going to kick us off this evening.
Thank you, Tara. Welcome to the second of 4 webinars on the 2020 Focus General Plan update for the City of National City. My name is Carlos Aguirre, and I am the Director of the National City Housing Authority. The purpose of these webinars is to provide the public with an opportunity to learn more about National City's Focus General Plan update, ask questions, and provide further input on what is being proposed through the update. Because the general plan is the guiding document for the city to prepare for future growth, public participation is invaluable, and we are glad that you have made the time to participate. Please help us by informing your neighbors about the opportunity to participate in this webinar series, and by completing the survey found on National City's website at nationalcityca.gov/FGPU. At this time, I'd like to introduce the facilitator for the webinar, Tara Lake. Tara is a lead project manager for WSP USA, a leading consulting firm focused on building resilient and sustainable communities. Again, we thank you for participating. Tara?
Great, thank you. Next slide. So here's the agenda for this evening, quick introductions and just a little webinar housekeeping. And then I'll go over a project overview, and then we will go over the housing and land use elements, the transportation, safety, climate action plan, and then a quick wrap up. So Carlos already introduced me, and I am the project manager for this Focus General Plan update. We have Seth Torma, who is leading up our transportation element. And we have Stephanie Whitmore, who is leading up the climate action plan as well as the environmental impact report. And we have Ryan Whipple, who will be helping us out moderating the Q&A. He's also a National City resident. Next slide. And there's lots of staff that are involved in helping us. But I was just going to name off the lead staff. You already met Carlos Aguirre, and we have Martin Reeder, Ray Pay, Angelita Palma, Myra Martinez, Robert Llano, and Jose Lopez. So tonight we are going to have a Q&A, and in order to do that, please type in your questions in the question box as you see on the screen. It's probably located on the right-hand side of your screen, and you can see there's a pull down next to questions, and you can type a question in there. We are going to try to get to the questions after each section. We'll have some time for Q&A, so Ryan will be reading those questions to us, and we'll be verbally answering them. And we'll try to get it to as many as we can. We do want to keep it to an hour and a half. So if we don't have time for all the questions, then we'll be answering them in written form, and that will be on our website. And all the questions, even the ones that we verbally answer, we're going to post a summary of those in English and Spanish on the website. So please go to there if you'd like to see more. We're also going to be polling throughout the webinar, so you've maybe done that in other webinars, but there'll be a chance for you to click on the screen and answer questions. So please participate. I mean, it's kind of fun, interactive, but it also really helps inform our process and really gives us some valuable insight into what you guys are looking for and issues, et cetera, that you have. And again, this meeting is recorded and it will be posted on the website as well. Next slide, please. And this webinar is translated into Spanish live. So if you would like to listen in Spanish, please dial the phone number there as well as the code. And this number and code will be on the bottom of every screen in case you don't have time to write it down, but it will be on the bottom of every slide. Next slide. And there's more opportunities to listen in Spanish as well. We're going to be having a Spanish webinar on Wednesday, September 9th from 6 to 7:30. We have office hours in Spanish on Thursday, September 10th from 5 to 6. And then we have a survey that's online right now, and that's in both English and Spanish. And so I will do a quick project overview. Oops, sorry, something's in my face. What is a general plan? A general plan is really guiding a document, a blueprint for the city's growth for the next 20 to 30 years. And this is a plan that's legally binding. Every city needs to have one in the state of California. And so we're going to be addressing all the new state legislation, all the planning that National City has done over the last few years since 2011, since the last adopted general plan updated. The city has done all kinds of really great things, so we want to make sure that that's consistent with the general plan. And then we also, of course, want to address our demographics are changing, the population is changing, et cetera. Next slide. And so the scope of our focused general plan update is we are updating the housing element, the land use, the safety, and the climate action plan. We're also updating zoning code and specific plans so any of the kind of policy and goals that we come up with in the general plan, make sure that those are reflected in the zoning code and the specific plans. We'll also be developing objective design standards, and then we will be conducting a supplemental program environmental impact report. Next slide. So here's our timeline for the project. On the left, you really see our critical path. We will be developing the preferred land use and mobility network in the fall of 2020. So that way that can inform the environmental review, which needs to kick off in the winter in 2021. We have a deadline to submit our housing element to the state in April of 2021. So that really is the reason for this timeline, is that we have that state mandated deadline. Next slide. And so there's lots of ways to get involved. We have a survey online right now. Please take that and let your friends and family know if they're not on this webinar. We would love, a lot of participation. We of course have the webinars that you're on right now. We, as Carlos mentioned, have 4 of them. We're having them at different times of the day and on the weekend. So that way people can participate depending on their work schedule and other life commitments. We're holding office hours, so we'll show a slide that lists those office hours, but that's so you can get a hold of us. We won't be in any other meetings during that time, but you also can call us, during any business hours as well. But we just wanted to reserve some blocks of time that it's just going to be easier to get a hold of us. And we are communicating all this through social media, through our website, and through email blasts as well. And we'll be conducting a series of stakeholder interviews too. Next slide. And so here's just a little bit what the survey looks like. We're using this platform called MetroQuest. It's really interactive. We use it on projects all over the country, and it really has a high success rate of getting a lot of participation because it has interactive kind of like games, and it really kind of keeps people interested, and we just find that we have a lot of more success with it than a long 5-page long of text of survey. So we're asking questions about housing, we're asking questions about mobility, and we have maps where you can mark where you have issues and where you would like to see things happen, etc. So yeah, we encourage you to take it. Next slide, please. And here's our first polling question. What topic area being addressed through the Focus General Plan update is most important to you? Please check 1. Thanks. And it just takes a minute or so just for those results to come in. All right, so it looks like housing with 33% has taken number 1, and all the rest are about the same. So are the same: land use, safety, and climate change, but none for transportation. Well, Seth and Ryan, I guess you won't need to speak tonight. Just kidding. All right, thank you for participating. The land use and housing elements. Next slide. So what is a land use element? This really designates the distribution, location, the extent of uses of land for housing, for industry, for business, for schools, parks, open space, roads, etc. Next slide. And here's a map of the existing land uses. In yellow is residential, so you can see that National City is primarily made up of residential. You can see the industrial in purple, that's more along the waterfront. And in red is commercial. So you see that along our commercial corridors and in the downtown area. Next slide. And a plan that's been recently done here in National City called Interconnect, just adopted this year. Here's an image from that plan, and it talks about 10-minute neighborhoods and about really developing 10-minute neighborhoods in National City. So the idea there is that you can get to these different uses, such as you can get to school, you can get to an office, you can get to a bank, you can get to the dentist, you can get to a hospital, etc. All within a 10-minute walk or bike ride. So developing policies and zoning, etc., land use that really then when development occurs, it really can develop in this way to make 10-minute neighborhoods. So that's an example of how land use policy really kind of creates this built environment that we're in. Next slide. And so what is a housing element? So it contains policies and programs to address housing for all income levels. And again, this is required by state law. And so just to look at kind of some numbers of where we are and where we're going, population presently is about 62,300, and we presently have around 17,400 units. And we look out to 2050, it's projected for National City to grow to 85,000, about 85,000 people, and the housing units to be about 24,700 units. Next slide. And so the housing element really has to address what we call the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, and that's also called RHNA. And so we're preparing for the planning period of 2021 to 2029. And so it has been decided that, and this is something that Sandag in their methodology creates, that National City is to produce, or at least be able to accommodate 5,437 units. And you can see the various income levels there that we're supposed to strive to meet in this arena. Next slide. And so we're currently underway with a site inventory assessment. So that's looking at where all in National City we can provide for that housing. And so we look at vacant sites, but as you know, National City doesn't have a lot of vacant sites. It's a pretty built out city. So we also look at city-owned sites. We're looking at sites in the downtown specific plan area because that's already zoned for very high density multifamily use and mixed use. The mixed-use district corridors also are zoned not as high as downtown, but also for higher density mixed use with commercial and residential. And then also your multifamily zoned areas as well. So we're looking at how much these sites can accommodate per the zoning, but also more than that, because these sites were in last cycle's RHNA and not been developed. So we have to kind of prove why we think they're going to get developed this time, and some sites, maybe aren't good candidates, but then some sites are, and there's been a lot of interest in it, or it's something that's for sale right now or for lease, etc. So there's a lot of different variables we look at, and we then put them on this map saying that yes, this is a good site for multifamily housing because of those reasons. Next slide. And so I just want to go over briefly goals and policies from the current housing element, because a lot of these are going to be going forward in the next one, but also just gives you more of an idea of what a housing element is. So the goal to maintain and enhance the quality of existing residential neighborhoods, conserve the affordability of existing housing stock. Next slide. Increase the availability and affordability of safe and sanitary housing for all income groups. Provide a sufficient number of housing units, range of housing types. Promote and implement fair housing practices and equal access to housing opportunities. And enhance housing affordability through energy conservation and design. And so to talk about some kind of strategies of how we might meet these goals for the housing element, one strategy, of course, is to increase housing production. And so how to, what are some ways to do that? One way is to adopt an accessory dwelling unit ordinance. So we'll be looking at how we can make it easier, more affordable for people to build what we call ADUs. And so, for instance, we can make the permitting of them more streamlined, make it faster, make it more affordable. So, for instance, the city of Encinitas currently has what they call permit ready ADU program. So we're looking at all these variety of methods of how we can help National City residents build these ADUs, and so hopefully help them to get it done in a cheaper manner. Next slide. Oops, yeah, thank you. Also, another strategy to increase housing production is adopt an inclusionary housing ordinance. And so what that means, as multifamily housing gets developed, if they're developing what we call market rate housing, that the inclusionary ordinance would require them to build affordable housing with that. And then usually an ordinance like that says they either have to build it on site or pay an in lieu fee to the city. So this way, we really can get that housing for all income levels, and that way it's really retained in those areas. So that way we don't have, you know, all affordable one place and all lower income at another place, but that really we want, you know, mixed income in the communities. We want choice, we want diversity, et cetera. So this has been really successful in other cities. So we'll be looking at doing that here. Next slide. And another strategy is to provide incentives beyond what the state already does. The state has a density bonus program. And so in addition to that, you know, with the state density program, that you can also actually, you know, provide even more incentives to developers to provide affordable housing. So we'll look at different techniques and strategies to maybe go above and beyond the state density bonus program. Next slide. Another strategy is to reduce development costs. So one way to do this is to adopt objective design standards. I know this is getting a little planner-esque in the speak, but you know, most cities have what you call design guidelines. You know, kind of it helps the decision makers, you know, planning commission, city council, staff, et cetera. When a project comes in, they say, hey, you know, in this neighborhood, we really want the buildings to have these features because that really looks like the character of the neighborhood, et cetera. But they're discretionary, and that's why they're called guidelines. But for developers, that sometimes can be tricky because there's a lot of unknown there. And so what other cities are finding, if they adopt what they call objective design standards, meaning, you know, that's not discretionary, it's design standards that they do have to implement. But if they do, then they don't have to go through a discretionary process, that it can go by right. So it's a much faster process for developers. So therefore, it's more affordable. And so hopefully then they pass on that affordability to the housing, because then the housing's not as expensive to build. Next slide. And another strategy is to potentially reduce parking requirements. So we would make, you know, great care that if, you know, we did reduce parking requirements in a higher density area, though that doesn't lead to spillover into neighborhoods and stuff like that. But the idea is that if the housing is near transit and it's, you know, very much accessible, that, you know, people may have less cars if they're near frequent transit, you know, such as the trolley. So we'd look at lessening some of these standards, because we've heard from developers over and over again that, you know, it's very expensive to build structured parking in a multifamily type of complex. And if they can build less parking, but still accommodate the parking need, again, they can pass that savings on, and that the housing's cheaper to build, and thus they can rent it out in, you know, in a cheaper way. Next slide. And another strategy is streamlining the entitlement process, which we sort of talked about this already, but there's other ways to help streamline that process, and other ways to have projects go by right, or to allow them more incentives. So we'll look in different strategies for that. So for example, the city of Santa Rosa has a streamlined eligibility, why can't I say that word tonight, but checklist that will help the process go faster, and again, make it more affordable for developers. Next slide. And another strategy is to continue programs that provide support for homeowners and renters. And so such as down payment assistance, landlord tenant counseling programs, and housing rehab and repair, as well as tenant-based rental assistance. Next slide. And so another polling question: to accommodate the city's housing need, where would you prioritize housing production? Choose all that apply. So it looks like so commercial corridors with 56%, and followed by downtown National City at followed by other neighborhoods at 44%, and then downtown at 33%, and then lastly West Side at 11%. And another poll, to accommodate the city's housing need, what type of units would you like to see produced? Choose all that apply. So it looks like a low medium density at 70%, and ADUs at 60%, and medium density at 40%, followed by high density at 10%. Thank you. Okay, so now we're on to our Q&A portion. Do we have any questions, Ryan, yet?
We don't have any questions yet. So just like to remind everyone that if you have any questions on either the land use or housing element, feel free to go ahead and write that question in the chat, and you can populate questions there at any time. And every time we have these windows, we'll go ahead and ask those questions. We just got one, Tara. The first question here is, will this general plan help with creating jobs?
Sure, thank you. The general plan comes up with policies to definitely help National City grow economically. So that certainly is a goal and a desire for sure. So as you know, we're in the very beginning stages here, but absolutely, I think that's a goal. Thank you.
All right. Don't have any other questions at the moment. Oh,
so
yeah.
Oh, I said need more open spaces. Noted. We will talk about that with staff. So we'll move on now, but we have four other times I think where we have Q&A. So definitely you can ask your questions during another section. But thank you. The next slide. So with that, we'll turn it over to Seth. It looks like you're on mute.
There we go. Hi, everybody. Just making sure you could hear me. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Well, National City has a rich transportation history. It featured one of the first electric rail car systems through the city, as well as the first light rail system in the country, the Trolley Blue Line. The expansion of the freeway system provided benefits, including more accessibility to other parts of the region, but it also cut across multiple communities within National City with the construction of I-5 and 805. So the question is, what is a transportation element? So the transportation element is the blueprint document that guides the city's future decision-making related to transportation. The transportation element addresses all modes of travel, from the vehicle to pedestrians, bicycles, public transit, goods movement, as well as new mobility, and we'll talk more about what new mobility is in just a moment. The transportation element and the general plan update in general, we're certainly building on numerous previous city planning efforts. We're not starting from scratch, and we list just a few of the recent ones here, but everywhere starting back with the last general plan update about 10 years ago. And so Some of those recent plans that we're building upon include the Smart Foundation Plan in 2014, the Downtown Specific Plan in 2017, the Interconnect, which we'll talk more about in 2020, which provided a rich understanding of the city and a lot of information, then the Home to Waterfront Connectivity Study, and other recent plans. We want to highlight some of what we found from existing conditions, building on that. And so here, what we're illustrating is as part of that existing conditions work, we're documenting where missing sidewalks are, shown in green, and where recently completed sidewalks have been constructed, shown in that purplish pink color here. We've also documented where the existing and planned bicycle facilities are, both within the city and how they connect to the regional facilities externally. And we've done the same for public transit, for the vehicle roadway network, and for goods movement and parking. As part of the existing conditions, the online surveys will allow you to tell us where you'd like to see more sidewalks, more bike lanes, or identify where you'd like to see particular street improvements so that we can get a broad understanding of where we need to focus this plan. So what the transportation element is driven by 4 key themes shown here, and we'll go through them in detail on each of the following slides. So the first one and the most important one is safety and reliability. I'm hearing some laughing there. Do I have something on my face?
No, nothing at all. Sorry.
Okay, just making sure. Just making sure. So safety and reliability is really the number one most important thing. A safe transportation system and network is key to community well-being, and a robust and resilient transportation network safely accommodates all users. And importantly, it maintains access for critical lifeline services during an emergency event like flooding, etc. The other key driver here, and I'm glad we got the question before, is economic development. The transportation network plays a key role in connecting people with goods and services they need. And an effective transportation network is vital to driving economic development. And so part of this plan will focus on what transportation policies and plans we can support national cities' economic growth. Also important to the plan are accessible neighborhoods. I'm almost getting the giggles. I don't know why. Accessible neighborhoods. Part of our overarching goal is to ensure that National City residents have quick, safe, and convenient access to the places they want to go within National City, like parks, schools, and your favorite shops and restaurants. And that aligns closely with recent plans like the Interconnect study. And then finally, there have been many recent advances in transportation technology, I'm sure some of which you've seen, like electric bikes and electric scooters, neighborhood electric vehicles, and some behind the scenes like sophisticated coordinated signal timing and systems. So we want to make sure that National City has a plan to address these new technologies, not only the technologies that are there today, but the other pending technologies that we know are coming very soon. And we show a couple of those here, like microtransit, transit that has a broader range and a more distinct range of possibilities in serving broader networks, or even the pending autonomous vehicles. And so we want to address those things that are in front of us today, but also look towards the future, because this is about a blueprint for future decision making of what are those changes pending changes that might affect us in the future. And so those are some of the four key areas that we want to address in this plan as thematically as we move forward. And with that, we have a few questions for you. A few polling questions will help inform our next steps on the plan. So the first question is, what types of transportation do you generally use? Choose all of that apply. Okay, we're just waiting a moment. It takes just a moment for the results to come in. Okay, so we have a lot of people, everybody would like to see, everybody uses private automobiles, but also as typical, people use a variety of methods to get around, from walking to rideshare, which includes Uber and Lyft kind of services, to public transportation and biking. The next question is, then what influences the type of transportation that you choose? And again, choose all that apply. Again, we'll just wait a moment here as the results come in. Okay. So it's pretty even across the board that safety, the amount of time it takes you, cleanliness and availability and access are all key influencers on what you choose, and cost to a lesser extent. The next question is what transportation improvements would you like us to focus on? Choose again all that apply. And we're waiting just a moment for those results to come in, and I'm gonna close my door here as the kids are running around creating havoc. Okay, so interesting. This is slightly different than the results we got the other day, which is so interesting to see, and I'm glad that we do this multiple times. So the number one is you'd like to see more streetscape beautification, trees, sustainable landscaping, pedestrian improvements coming in at number two, as well as very important, public transport, improvements to vehicular travel, and then bicycle improvements as well. And then on the next slide, the final slide here, we want to draw everybody's attention to our online tool. We gave you broad questions today, but in order to understand exactly where we'd like to see, you would like to see those improvements, you can go to the website right here, use our mobility marker tool to tell us exactly where there's a bicycle issue, a pedestrian issue, some other issue that you'd like us to fix on the map. And so you can see the link again right there. And that really helps us in this next step of the process as we develop a comprehensive set of improvements and needs for the community. And with that, we'll open it up to Q&A.
Alrighty, thank you, Seth. First question over here is, does electric vehicle charging stations fall into the transportation plan? This is something our city needs.
A really good question, and the answer to that is it absolutely does. It's part of that new technology that's coming in, and so it's going to be something that we want to look at and account for as we address this plan. So I think under that element of the plan, what policies and what plans can we put in place today to help facilitate that? Additionally, I should note that the regional metropolitan planning organization called Sandag has an upcoming study that's going to look at addressing and where charging stations and what the regional plan is for charging stations in the region. And so we'll be looking at that as well as it becomes available.
Awesome, thank you, Seth. Next question. Do you think people will take advantage of public transportation, especially with the whole pandemic happening, or will there be sanitation protocols? People don't really want to take public transit for fear of getting sick.
That's a really good question. You know, I believe that the pandemic will be over at some point in the near future, and that at that time, and of course, you know, nobody can predict, but the company works on a lot of transit projects around the country, around the world, and I think the overall understanding is that fast and convenient and reliable transit will certainly drive a market, and people will use that. In terms of the cleaning protocols, I think all transit agencies have been developing rigorous protocols that are frankly building on one another and standardized. We've been developing those for a number of agencies, including BART. But I know that MTS, the agency that operates in this region, has those policies in place as well. And so those rigorous policies and procedures are addressing that need in the near term. And then finally, as part of this process, we'll be closely coordinating with Sandag on their regional transportation plan, which envisions some pretty dramatic improvements to transit that would provide additional options for National City residents to give them fast and convenient access to additional transit, just to provide more options to get you where you need to go.
Thank you, Seth. Another question here, and Martin partially addressed this already, but what can be done about all the truckers parking on Roosevelt Street? Martin's response to everyone here was that it's being addressed through a separate parking plan effort, but I don't know if, Seth, you wanted to bring up the goods movement and those portions of the general plan in its context.
Certainly. Parking is a component of the general plan, and so and in fact we're working closely with the city to make sure that the findings of that study, as well as what the best practices are in terms of policies and smart parking opportunities, are available to help address this, not just in the near term, but again as we look forward in the future, and rely on this plan as a blueprint for making future decisions within National City.
Thanks. That's all the questions that we have. Actually, sorry. Well, one question just came in. Our streets are getting more narrow and street lanes are being taken away. What is the reasoning for this? During rush hour, we see a buildup in traffic.
A very good question, and I think you know, of course, there certainly are, and National City has been rigorously developing a plan that addresses all modes of travel. And so, whereas certain streets may and certain networks may be most appropriate for slowing traffic, for providing access and networks to pedestrians and bicycles, or where slowing streets or providing for a streetscape that encourages use of local retail is the most, and economic development is the most important thing. Just equally important is balancing that with a comprehensive network for vehicles as well. And so there's a term that's used called complete streets. It really means looking at a comprehensive network of streets that provides for all users. In some streets, it may be best to prioritize bicycles and pedestrians over vehicles. And in other streets, it may make more sense to prioritize vehicular capacity. And so as we move forward in this plan, we're going to be addressing both.
Thanks, Seth. Just let the public know, we also received a couple comments in here regarding beautification as well as parking spaces. Those comments we are keeping and we are directing them to staff as well as our team here to be as part of consideration in the development of this general plan as well as the transportation element. So just if we don't read a comment out loud, it is still being documented and addressed. We don't have any other questions at the moment, unless any come in last minute. So I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Tara to bring us into the next section.
Thank you.
On mute. Thank you. And so now we're going to talk about the safety element. I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie.
Hi. Thank you, Tara. Another component of the general plan update is looking at an update to the safety element. The adopted safety element was adopted in conjunction with the last general plan update in 2011. And this will also be a fairly focused update, just to get everyone up to speed on what the safety element talks about. It addresses both natural and man-made hazards within the city. And it contains a series of maps that illustrate the geologic extent of certain hazardous conditions. And it contains a set of policies that also serve to address various risks. Talk about more of the contents on the next slide. Since the last general plan update was adopted in 2011, there have been several pieces of state legislation that mandate what you look at in a safety element. I'm not going to go through the details of all of those, but the most important item to note is that there is a new section to the to the safety element that addresses climate change, adaptation, and resilience. So this safety element will include hazard mitigation planning. It'll look at updates to any seismic and geologic hazards within the city. It'll take a fresh look at flood hazards and inundation areas. It'll look at policies regarding fire and emergency services and emergency response and disaster preparedness. It'll address what hazardous materials may be present within the city and any brownfield conditions. And then it will add the new climate change and resiliency section. Next slide. So here's a little preview of the series of maps that will be updated with this element update. Here you can see the updated floodplain maps that we have included from FEMA data. It shows the current 100 and 500-year flood mapping within the city, those flood limits in relationship to critical public facilities, including schools and hospitals. The flood areas, as can be seen, are mainly along the Sweetwater River, and these haven't changed much since the last iteration of the safety element. It's important that the city have updated floodplain mapping as we move forward in planning land uses and future facilities. Next slide. Another map that has been updated, as you can see, this is a little preview of the fire hazard mapping. The fire hazard mapping is received from CAL FIRE. It shows wildfire hazard risk within the city. Most of the city is built up and urbanized, and so there is very little risk, as can be seen. However, there are high fire hazard risk areas directly to the east within the unincorporated area. Next slide. The next slide talks about emergency response. Emergency response is coordinated with the service providers, with the police and fire department, and the general plan discloses some basic information about emergency response times of both fire and 911 calls. And the general plan update will address any changes in emergency response times that could happen as a result of changes in land use or circulation within the city. Next slide. Brownfields are really important to planning for a variety of reasons. First, in case you're not familiar, brownfields are sites or parcels of land within the city that may have the presence of a hazardous material, usually associated with the past use of that property. It could be some sort of subsurface contamination associated with underground storage tanks and that sort of thing. Brownfields also have another component. In addition to the physical properties associated with them, there are either real or perceived issues associated with liability and cost associated with cleanup of those properties, depending on the future intended use. They also provide a great opportunity, however, because there is a lack of vacant land within the city. And so if remediated correctly, they can serve as great infill locations for new housing or commercial uses. As you can see on the slide here, this is a site that was a brownfield site. It is now currently the location of the Paradise Creek Apartments, and so that's really a success story for brownfield redevelopment within National City. And the focused general plan update will address the potential reuse of brownfields as well. Next slide. Finally, the new section being added to the safety element is the climate adaptation and resiliency section. I think most people are aware that climate change, rising temperatures, and sea levels pose a variety of risks to communities. The risks most likely to face National City include an increased number of extreme heat days during the summertime and an increased frequency and intensity of precipitation that can lead to flooding and also sea level rise impacts. We'll be using a tool called CalAdapt, and that tool provides a series of maps that looks at different future emission scenarios and the potential risks associated with those levels of greenhouse gas emissions and how many additional extreme heat days you may see or what the additional flooding risk could be into the future. Next slide. And we have a polling question. What safety element related issues concern you the most? And feel free to choose all that apply. Natural hazards, seismic, geologic, flooding, or wildfire, crime and emergency response, the presence of hazardous materials or brownfields and their cleanup, or climate change and adaptation. And we'll just wait a minute or two while the poll results come in. Let's see, all right. Well, this is pretty uniform. Looks like about 2/3 of the respondents are most worried about natural hazards and crime and emergency response, and to a lesser extent, they're worried about hazardous materials and climate change. Interesting. And do we have any questions, Ryan?
currently we have one question. Actually, it's more of a statement. So, oh, it looks like we have another polling question. Is that right, Suchi?
Oh,
Yes, we do have one more polling question for this section.
Okay. One more polling question, and then
Can you go back? Oh, Suchi's trying to redo the poll.
okay. I didn't see that polling question.
There it is.
Oh, okay. I think that's actually for the next section.
Sorry about that. We can move on to Q&A.
Okay.
All right. Yes, currently we don't have any additional questions at the moment. Again, we have some public comments that we're going to be addressing, but no questions right now. So if anyone has any questions that they'd like to bring concerning the safety element or any of the other elements that have been discussed, feel free to go ahead and type that into the chat box.
All right, well, I think we can move on to the next section, which is also Stephanie.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tara. So the final component of the Focus General Plan update that we'll be looking at is updating the Climate Action Plan. Along with the rest of the general plan, the Climate Action Plan was last updated in 2011. It was a very early adoption Climate Action Plan, so we will be looking at that fairly comprehensively with this update. Just to give a little bit of an overview or refresher for those who may not be familiar, you know, climate change is a widely accepted phenomenon, and the concept is very scientifically documented. Human-induced and generated greenhouse gas emission sources contribute substantially to the greenhouse effect, which is illustrated on the slide. The greenhouse effect is whereby heat is trapped within Earth's atmosphere, and that is caused because of the emissions, and it can result in higher temperatures, and the higher temperatures resulting in sea level rise and other harmful conditions. So that's a quick 101 on climate planning. Okay, on the next slide, we talk about the various components of the Climate Action Plan. There are 4 main components to the Climate Action Plan process. These include, and we'll go over each of these in detail, but the first includes an inventory of greenhouse gas emission sources within the city. We look at how much we want to reduce those emissions through setting targets. We do that through the implementation of various measures and policies that we'll be identifying in the Climate Action Plan. And then finally, there's a monitoring process that is identified in tracking how we go about implementing those measures and strategies. Next slide. So as I mentioned, the first step in the climate action planning process is creating an inventory of existing greenhouse gas emissions. We are currently in the process of doing that for the general plan update. So what you see on the screen is actually a representation of the greenhouse gas emissions inventory from the last iteration of the CAP. And this is the city's emissions in 2005. As can be seen, by far the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the city back in 2005 was based on transportation related sources, and that's from vehicles and trucks. Secondarily, we see that the energy sources from industrial and commercial uses was the second source of greenhouse gas emissions within the city. And the smaller pieces of the pie represent water use, wastewater use, and solid waste collection. Next slide. So once we have established an inventory of where greenhouse gas emissions are coming from, we do 2 things. We forecast those emissions into the future to look at what our emissions will look like in 2030 and 2050. It's called a business as usual model. And so that represents emissions trends without any type of mitigation or reduction strategies that we would employ. This is the forecast that is in the adopted 2011, again, CAP, and we can see that sources of emissions were not projected to change much into the future, with transportation-related sources remaining by far the largest contributor. Let's go to the next slide. This slide talks about setting GHG emissions reduction targets. And this is a little bit of a complicated process that's done through modeling, technical modeling, but it's mainly governed by two things. One is a number of pieces of state legislation that have been passed over the past decade and a half that look at what the state wants to be doing relative to greenhouse gas emissions reductions. The good news is, as can be seen on the graph on the slide, that the state did meet its 2020 emissions reductions targets. However, the 2030 and 2050 goals are much more ambitious. The city will likely set targets that correlate to the state's target on a per capita basis so that the city can assist the state in meeting its overall goals. Next slide. So we talked about strategies. We talk a lot about strategies and greenhouse gas mitigation strategies and reduction efforts when we talk about the climate action plan. Here on the slide, you can see a number of strategies. These came from the 2011 CAP. However, these are likely to remain fairly similar for the climate action plan update today. There are strategies that are broken down by sector, including energy, transportation, and land use, and a smaller number regarding solid waste, wastewater, and water. Energy strategies typically revolve around energy efficiency, implementing renewable energy within the city, or possibly participating in community choice aggregation or community choice energy, which is purchasing a greater percentage of renewables via the utility provider. Transportation and land use looks at alternative modes of transportation and supportive land uses like Tara and Seth talked about, increasing biking opportunities, walking opportunities, and that will be looked at through the transportation and land use element updates as well. Next slide. So what are the next steps when it comes to climate action planning? We do a climate action plan, and does it sit on a shelf or not? Really, implementation of the climate action plan does rely heavily on community participation, and that means individual households as well as the community at large. Global warming is a worldwide issue, and it can seem overwhelming to tackle at the local level. But really, ultimately, implementation of the climate action plan largely comes down to choice. A lot of the choices that we make every day, from riding a bike instead of driving and choosing to recycle, all are important as we implement the climate action plan. And I believe next we have a polling question. So we'd like to hear about what emissions, I think the polling question disappeared. What emissions reducing strategies would you like to see National City implement? And feel free to choose all that apply. And that includes increasing opportunities for other modes of transportation, pursuing incentives for financing renewable energy projects, increasing recycling and composting initiatives, or pursuing community choice energy. Please go ahead and select a couple. Okay, great. These are some interesting results. We don't often talk a lot about recycling and composting initiatives, but 100% of the participants are interested in seeing more of those. Increasing opportunities for other modes of transportation also ranks very high. Great, thank you. Do we have any questions, Ryan?
Yeah, we've got one right now, and this one reads, the majority of our GHG emissions are from transportation and vehicles. Will there be specific goals and targets for the percent of National City residents who walk, bike, take transit, i.e. a mode share shift? We can model our CAP goals after the City of San Diego's CAP.
Thank you. That's a great question. So I think I mentioned on the last slide that, largely climate action plan implementation comes down to choice. So the city can't, through the climate action plan, mandate how people choose to get around. We can provide choices. And then within the climate action plan, when we forecast our mitigated reductions, we have to make assumptions about how many people choose to engage in those alternative modes of transportation. So it's not an exact science. It's really trying to predict human behavior. And so the best the city can do is, again, provide those choices or incentives for individuals to commit to using alternative modes of transportation. And we will be outreaching again further on how we can implement those choices, and those will get captured in the climate action plan. Anything else?
Right now, no. No other questions are coming through. We are, I believe, ahead on time. So if there are more questions out there with our attendees, feel free to send them our way, and I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Tara, and I'll let you know if we get any last minute questions in.
Great, thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Stephanie. So to go over again, the outreach that we're doing right now, we have the survey up that will be there for a couple more weeks. So please go ahead and take it and tell your friends and family to. We have another webinar on Saturday morning. It'll be the same as this, so unless you want to see it twice, but please tell others if they have missed it that there's another opportunity, as well as our webinar on Wednesday, September 9th in Spanish. And again, we have office hours. There's the dates and times listed there, although we've already done a couple, so we have one coming up tomorrow from 10 to 12 with myself. And then we also have office hours in Spanish. So with that, did we get another question?
We did. One question here. What plans are set for the land across the street from the National City Library?
I can answer that question. This is Martin Reeder, Principal Planner with the National City Planning Department. We have a approved project for that site. It is a multi-unit residential project. I believe it is market rate, and it's around 180 units. It's been approved for some time. The developer obviously is taking it easy right now during the COVID time. Not really sure what's happening with that, but we do have an approved project there.
Thanks, Martin. And so I think that's all the questions we have now, but I want to thank everybody for joining us, and it really makes a difference. We need your input as we plan this. You guys, know your city best, and again, feel free to call myself or Carlos anytime if you have more ideas you want to share, more questions, more comments, etc. And again, please take the survey. We're going to be doing another round of webinars in the fall, probably around November. So please look out for that. Look out for the emails or go to our website. But we'll have more chances to participate. So that I thank you, and I hope you guys have a good evening and a great Friday tomorrow. And we hope to talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody.